Okay.
Got it.
Very good.
Okay.
Got it.
Now.
So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is the 25th of May, 2022, and I'm Philip Auerbach, President and founder of the AGIF, the Auerbach Global Impact Foundation. And we are a nonprofit that advances the missions of other nonprofits, both globally and domestically primarily, through education and potential funding. And this is a new series of community forums which are interactive, and they focus on capacity building and how to grow nonprofits, and of course collaboration. So our goal is to create a community of nonprofits where we can share ideas with each other based on what our presenters are telling us, and we have obviously our own reactions to them. So our presenters today are Dr. Delores Springs and Mr. Jim Byrnes. Both of Delores is in New Jersey, Jim is in Pennsylvania, and they will introduce themselves. Delores, do you want to start?
Yes. My name is Dr. Delores Springs, and I serve on the board of the AGIF, and I'm really so proud to be part of this organization. And everybody here is just so dedicated to advancing nonprofit missions and really hoping to improve and enrich the lives of people in their communities and those that they serve. I'm also the CEO and founder of Springs of Hope Consulting, and I've held many nonprofit leadership positions over 11 years. I even ran a family counseling and support service nonprofit for several years before starting my consulting company about 8 or 9 years ago. I specialize in strategy and management consulting. And after having, so many successes and also failures throughout my 20 years in leadership, I now am able to really help organizations across many sectors, including healthcare, higher education, nonprofit, to really create successful and innovative leadership development programs, workforce training, and business process optimization plans. I also truly enjoy learning and teaching, and I teach in a doctoral business management program as well. So I'm excited to be here, and I want to introduce my esteemed and wonderful colleague, and Jim Byrnes, who will take it away.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Springs. I'm very proud to be part of the Springs of Hope Consulting operation. Delores and I collaborate on some things, and we're both really happy to be part of the AGIF, and to see where this circumstance can go is exciting to me. Anyway, my background is 45 years. I did retail distribution and retail management and leadership and retail ownership. At one time, I was a proud owner of outright of 14 stores and co-owned a couple more, and did the distribution and the delivery of those retail stores in the home decor and gift field. After that exhausting season of 45 years, I began to focus in the nonprofit arena, knowing I wanted to keep going. I'm not retirable, as my wife will say, and I wanted to keep going. And I've gotten involved in not just taking my knowledge to the nonprofit industry, but helping those with strategic planning and particularly development strategic planning, which is a passion of mine. I was called for 3 years to serve and as a CEO of a $3.5 million rescue mission, and I did that. Really learning the really ins and outs of the nonprofit and took them to a different level. And one of my proudest achievements is a couple of years ago, I started a nonprofit organization for homeless families, and I was the starting CEO, and we built that not just to sustainability that I could turn it over to a director and move away, but we left them with $300,000. So I'm really entrenched in the nonprofit field and really, really glad to be with you folks today.
Great.
Thank you. Delores, do you want to begin?
Yes. One thing I think I want to add is that I think we could go around and do just brief introductions. I would like to also ask that if you do have any questions, that you wait till the end of the presentation, and then we will go over all the questions and have our discussion at that time. Halo or
Carl?
Carl, would you mind just quickly introducing yourself and what organization you're from, a little bit about who you are?
Carl, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Palo Walker, and I'm the president of Daily Digital Imaging. We are an award-winning, woman-owned, veteran-owned, certified green direct marketing and commercial printing company located 32 miles due east of beautiful downtown San Francisco, California. We focus on printing. We focus on putting campaigns together that have ROIs that are measurable. So I also sit on a couple of nonprofit boards. The nonprofit board I particularly sit on is $175 million annual revenue. So it's a big nonprofit. It actually has two boards, a governing board and a fundraising board. And I'm specifically on the fundraising board because that's what I'm interested in. I'm the 2019 Philanthropist of the Year Award winner in the state of California, raising $63.2 million on behalf of nonprofits. I'm a trained CFRE. That is my passion, and as an honorably discharged combat soldier myself, I am a social justice warrior. My name is Palo Walker, and I'm the president of Daily Digital Imaging, and I'm a master storyteller that connects the dots. Carl, you're up.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I have my experience in the profit world and also the nonprofit world. I'm a full-time financial guy. I've been involved in financial planning, the mortgage industry, and my whole life I've been involved in the church world, mostly as a paid professional church musician. And I have been speaking with Jim extensively about embarking on starting a nonprofit. So I'm at the very beginning stages of having my own organization. I've written a book, a play, music to go along with the play, and it addresses some social concerns that we're all faced with today, but provides some hope and some healing opportunities. I want to get that message out there in the most effective way as possible. So hoping to glean some ideas from this conversation to help me with that.
Great. Well, again, I want to welcome you guys to the first of a three-part series, Finding Success During Chaotic and Turbulent Times. And I think as leaders, we all understand what characterizes a high turbulence environment. We're all faced with challenges, and when those challenges arise, I know for myself that I get a sense of urgency to lead and drive the change in the face of adversity. So as we go through each part, we'll provide some insights on what organizational and leadership capabilities are needed to succeed in turbulent times, and then talk about how to create a more sustainable strategic plan or run a sustainable nonprofit. So I'm really pleased to be here and take part in sharing some of my knowledge and experiences. And Jim and I will attest to, as we told you, we've had many positions in the nonprofit world. For myself, I've been an employee, business owner, volunteer, and we will be going over the three-part series, which is the first one today. We'll be talking about, is your strategic plan sustainable? And next month, we will be talking about proven strategies to raise fundraising and development success. And in July, we'll be talking about a three-part business process improvement cycle to optimize your program outcomes. Jim, do you have anything to add?
Not anybody. We certainly welcome Palo to the part with us. We'll be anxious to get in the second part of that. We are anxious to get in a good dialogue about proven strategies. You certainly have been entrenched in that. So yes. Great. Let's go.
So in part one of the series, we're going to outline how to identify if your plan is sustainable. And by presenting, some business solutions and best practices, we hope to increase sustainability and provide some, helpful insights that we found to be successful in our service in the nonprofit world. And hopefully the result will end up improving the planning outcomes for you as well. And although we're going to be presenting this information in a presentation form, this is really, to me, an opportunity to deepen our strategic thinking so that we can start to achieve more success and sustainability planning efforts. And hopefully as well, will improve in business and leadership overall. So one conclusion I've drawn is that sustainable plans really require a solid roadmap. And it's a living document where you infuse your organizational, cultural values and key decisions. We're data driven now, so it's document everything. You're constantly, planning and writing down ideas and trying to come up with good strategies to implement so you can achieve more success. And so you want to leverage the intelligence of those around you. And of course, communicate early, often, clearly, effectively, so you're really able to address some uncertainties out loud. So to get started, we're first gonna, discuss the steps you need to take to ensure your plan is sustainable. Then we're gonna move on into talking about 3 planning strategies to boost sustainability.
My comment here is, if you and your board and your staff are beginning to learn how to work together, or you've been together for a while, or you're building the board and the staff, boy, team building and interaction is going to be incredibly key. And I often say strategic planning is going to force you into team building, and team building is going to force you into making a sustainable plan, because it has to be done together. And we're not just putting a document together, we're putting and I don't think it's science here. It truly is a document that's not a science, but a living, breathing organism to take you to where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Perfect. So we're going to begin to talk about the steps. And Jim, do you want to take the first one?
I would be glad to. If we're talking about a clear, comprehensive grasp of opportunities and challenges, everybody talks about the SWOT plan, and that's what we're talking about here. But this is really looking at both internal and external challenges of your organization, and internal and external positives and opportunities and strengths. So as you look at your organization and as you begin to really dig into the beginning of the planning stages, you have to really look closely at what those are. And you may have some pushback here. And with a very small startup that I worked with a couple of years ago, the executive director almost walked away from the first meeting when we started talking about this, because she felt it was a front on her performance and who she was. It wasn't at all. And we got her through that and explained to her, no, that she has that, and she was doing a good job. She's done a great job. And when we talk about the strengths, you're the one that built all these strengths in this organization so far. So please bear with us when doing it. And again, don't forget, in each of these steps, you have to make sure you address the people. This is about the people that we're trying to get working together as we build this plan. Do you have any more thoughts about that, or you want to go to 2, Delores?
Yeah, I think you did a great job. I'll go on to 2 and talk about the comprehensive assessment of the organization's strengths and limitations. So what I mean by that, I think the bedrock of any sustainable plan is when your team considers the capabilities, strengths, and limitations of the people that you work with and the organization, with some objective and subjective input, of course. So while many, I think, typically in the nonprofit world, we focus on like funding limitations or external factors, perhaps, market changes are occurring. And that tends to be the focus of leadership. But a couple of aspects that I don't see that is usually a misstep is not focusing on assessing and understanding leadership and organizational cultures. Doing those assessments prior to or during the early stages of planning can be really helpful and critical to making sure it's an effective plan and it is sustainable. So assessing your organizational culture will reveal potential effectiveness of your plan and help you identify the human capital and the organizational values that will guide the decisions for your organization and team. Let me give you an example of a nonprofit that I worked with. I remember working with an animal rescue shelter who experienced a lot of turnover, which I think is really common for nonprofits. but they were so desperate to implement this plan for the purpose of developing a new program that would help manage the influx of animals that they needed to provide. They wanted to provide more medical care, I think more some type of therapeutic service and grooming service. So anyway, due to the high turnover, they were really challenged to implement the plan. They had to focus on hiring, recruiting, hiring, training employees. And once they were onboarded, they left so quickly. So their focus was more so on getting the right people in place rather than implementing the plan. So the program would not work without the program's no plan works without your most valuable asset, which is going to be your team. They're the ones making the decisions. They're the ones implementing it, and that's really important. So I suggested an assessment on leadership styles of the supervisors and to assess and identify a preferred workplace culture to really dig deep and find out, why they're having so much turnover and issues with retention. So once it was completed, they knew what the underlying needs were. They were able to take a step back, understand how to address leadership morale, how to provide the necessary training and support to create a high-performing team. And within about 6 months, they had these morale building opportunities happening regularly that really increased retention. They were implementing trainings and leadership development opportunities that would really leverage the skills, the communication and interpersonal skills of the leaders. And sometimes you need to change your strategy and to change the performance outcomes. And with the cultural and leadership assessments, you can really identify those strengths and limitations of the people who will be executing the plan. Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that covered that real well. I know, what's an external limitation? COVID-19. Hello. Go ahead. You're going to talk about 3 now.
Yeah, so I'm going to go into the inclusive approach. So leaders and managers, they need to support teams through equity, fairness, and encourage a performance, while also creating a really safe and inclusive workplace where all employees feel valued. And of course, all views are not weighted equally, and nor will every staff member may not be involved at every stage of the planning efforts. However, it is really it's possible to be inclusive without falling into a trap of too many cooks in the kitchen. There's a lot of alphas, and sometimes the competing agendas, really challenge planning efforts. But the focus is to really create meaningful discussions of shared and different experiences, viewpoints, and ideas. So when you're creating a strategic plan, having those different viewpoints can really boost that creativity and innovation as well. So to improve your planning efforts, one thing you may want to keep in mind is to make sure your team feels a sense of commitment to accomplishing the mission. That's really important. And a sense of belonging to the organization, because if they're committed and they really feel like they belong, then it is imperative to encourage, train, and inspire them to take ownership of the organization's journey and the planning effort. These are critical aspects that I think, sometimes gets lost in the shuffle of every, day-to-day activities, but it really does require change and perhaps, innovative ways to bridge those gaps, to include people that you may not see every day or work with all the time. So inclusive planning process asks more of people across the organization. And remember, redesigning the planning efforts is a form of organizational change. And, like many changes, it's really can be met with, like I mentioned before, competing agendas. Change is difficult for anybody. And so if you don't have an inclusive approach and there's somehow of a separation, especially between the leadership and the employees, oftentimes when the plans are put in place, it's met with a lot of resistance and sometimes disengagement, which the plan is not going to be sustainable. So requesting of everybody to listen is an extremely important part of the inclusion process as well. What isn't possible is to execute every idea. So even though you want to include everybody and make them feel valued and a part of the process, it's also understandable that you're not going to be able to implement everything. And so some people will, maybe a little disappointed, but at least they feel like they were heard and valued. And it's possible and essential to listen and to incorporate the ideas into, existing process and services. So for all of us, I think, well, for myself at least, I think having those difficult, constructive dialogues really helps make the sustainable planning efforts better. And then big ideas come with that. I'll just give you a really quick experience I had working on a nonprofit. I used to work at a nonprofit. It was primarily mental health, providing mental health counseling services. And we had a top-down leadership approach. It was that do as I say, not as I do, us versus them, follow my lead. So we, a lot of the employees complained because we felt overworked and underpaid. And I understand in nonprofits, a lot of people feel that way, overworked, because we all wear so many hats and trying to really push the mission forward. So I do understand that. But adding on extra responsibilities to staff members who are already burnt out is going to, really become a challenge, a problem. And they continue to implement these policies without having any dialogue with us. And staff protested. And then, loud voices often get attention. So, they ended up including us in the planning efforts. And once those barriers to an inclusive approach were identified, actionable strategies resulted in more dialogue, regular team meetings, reaching out, seeking our feedback on policy changes. And once they also implemented automated online questionnaires, surveys. We had more managers meeting with the employees to get their feedback. And so the process was in place to really strengthen the connectivity and engagement, which really helped gain our buy-in because we were now included in the decision-making process. We were included in brainstorming sessions. And so we felt part of the planning and decision-making process. So we, our job satisfaction increased, we performed better. So expressing a positive regard for feedback, hearing from everyone, it really makes people feel valued and more likely to ensure that your plan is a success. So just keeping the momentum going by seeking ways to bridge that gap and incorporate equity and inclusion is really important. Jim, do you want to add anything?
No, I'm going to get back into that when we get back into responsibilities.
Okay.
I'll jump in there, but go right ahead with the empowering your committee.
Perfect. So, the idea of building a foundation of empowerment, it really does tie into sustainability. As you empower staff, even your community, stakeholders, donors, you really invest in, a considerable amount of time and energy and dedication to help shape, and you want to build the plan that the planning committee is excited about and excited about the work ahead. And the foundation of empowerment helps to propel the planning process forward in an environment where people can, really thrive. So we're empowering your committee. It's really a participatory undertaking. I think where the core work of the plan, where the decision-making will generally be in the hands of a smaller group of people with a higher level of authority. And so empowering those folks to make decisions for your business is really important because it does increase the employee effort, boost engagement throughout the workforce. And I'm going to go into an example of an organization that I partnered with. So it's called Safe Harbin, and this is a New York nonprofit. And then their initial planning work was done, I think it was an 8-person committee. It's about 4 staff members and I think 4 representatives from their board. So in the 20 years, they stayed on track with their mission, but I guess at that time, the executive director, wanted to add more services. So they wanted to provide support for victims of crime and abuse in their families. Wonderful. The organization branched out into several new areas, including immigrant services, which, that's very valuable in their own right, but it just wasn't consistent with the mission. So the executive director, she ended up working with another consultant, came up with a strategic plan and gave it to the committee. And the committee, they just really didn't feel empowered to say anything because they were under the pressure to implement this plan and make it work. There was a lot of funding involved. There was some high stakes, pretty prominent, stakeholders, some elected officials who really wanted to see this happen. And their goal was, we have to have this in place by the end of the fiscal year. It was a really ambitious undertaking for an organization. However, because of the misalignment with what the funders wanted, and just wasn't consistent with the mission. So in talking about empowerment and to get back on track with the committee needed to feel empowered with confidence, with security, with trust, that they could have those difficult conversations, speak out when there's misalignments, be able to problem solve effectively, work together, focus on how to get back on track rather than just going along to get along. So when I'm talking about empowerment, I really think it's important to reinforce confidence and decision-making with positive feedback about ideas and efforts. And developing leaders by providing them with new responsibilities and opportunities to advance, stretching your team members' capability by challenging them to learn new skills, and even mentoring that helps build empowerment as well. So Jim, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I sure do, because it ties into my next point, which is 5. But we're talking about here clearly a board and a staff. Now we have some maybe smaller startup nonprofits in our group today too, and people listening in. Sometimes you have to lean on some friends that have some experience in these areas to get on board. If you're going to build a strategic plan, you do need some knowledgeable people on the board side of it, because they're the ones, board advisors are really vital to the organization. Of course, we know who's going to carry out the strategies. We know the staff is going to do that, but we do need that. So when we talk about number 5 is sharing responsibility of board and staff, you not just the inclusive part of it. It's almost, you have to make sure you define who people are, because I worked with a group, a nonprofit. It was a 5-year-old nonprofit not too long ago, and they had 12 board members. These board members had a real attitude toward the staff of 30 people, a real attitude. And we had to go back to our team building. We had to go back to address that. We had to get our chairman of our board and our executive director to just put together, how can we make this work? Because it put a screeching halt to the activity from the staff side. Believe it or not, we came to an equitable place with that the staff decided to look back at themselves in their own business, in their own role in regular life, in their for-profit life, and they came back and the old expression that my dad taught me, they learned how to put their tail between their legs and understand. So sometimes you have to be pretty tough with your board if they're not going to give the understanding to the staff members. And we were able to get the full commitment from that point forward. And that was a really challenging time. But normally everybody has to understand the board and the staff together have a shared responsibility for not just the goals we're putting together, but how are we going to make these strategies work? And that ties right into number 6, clarifying priorities, implementation, and oversight. In the responsibility area, Delores, did you want to offer something before I go into clarifying priorities?
No.
Okay, so strategic plan. Oh, everybody, they get all the humdrum about it. Oh no, we're going to do strategic planning. It's awful. Well, it's awful if you don't make it workable for the group. You have to tailor the whole program of strategic planning to the group and understanding of the individuals. I'm working with a brand new board of 11 right now. Matter of fact, we're doing our second strategic planning meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. 8 of them have never done strategic planning before. You have to make sure they understand it. So when you, yes, you're going to put together these 3 or 4 goals that you want to achieve in the next 5 years. All right, we know that that's the priority. Okay, and what are they? One may financial, one may be development, one may be program. But it's the strategies and the time element put together with that has to work. That's why it's absolutely so vital. As you develop your goals, you have to make sure, as Delores many times shares with me, you have the capacity to fulfill the strategies in that goal. They have to be outreaching goals, but you have to be able to do it. So what this is saying is make sure with the abilities and staff that you have, that you clarify what are going to be the most important areas. And we have to make sure we hit those every month. And we have to make sure we hit that at every checkpoint. And then the timeline that you put together is the oversight that makes sure that you can reach each of the goals, whether it's a quarterly timeline or a half year or a year toward your 5-year goal. Any elaboration there, Dr. Springs?
Nope, you did great. So I think we will move on to talk about the 3 strategic planning strategies to boost sustainability. So engage in strategic communication and talking about transparency. So transparency builds trust. And so what do I mean by that? Well, even if people don't like the planning efforts, they disagree with the strategies, or they don't fully understand the plan, they will still respect and appreciate direct, consistent, clear, honest, transparent, open communication about what, how, and why the plan is really vital to the success of the organization. And of course, to accomplish the mission. So if you want people to buy into that plan, and they need to be able to trust you as a leader, and trust the process as well. And these strategic plans, sometimes they're 3 to 5 years, so the process doesn't go quickly. So it may take a few times of revising and going over things and to get it right, and ensuring that there's transparency is really important, because it's also a need to see how their ideas and inputs are being captured. And it's also an opportunity to share through regular updates how things are going and progressing. So after all, if unilateral decisions are being made behind closed doors, there's just little incentive. There's little incentive to examine those decisions with a critical eye. So with transparency around the planning efforts and decisions, I think as leaders, we're compelled, to justify and stand behind what we claim. And perhaps this is something that is missing in sustainability and leadership, is the transparency and accountability.
The transparency, it fell apart with an organization I worked with, where one of the committees, very vital strategic committee, went ahead and did 3 of their meetings, and the rest of the group found out that they were not communicating it with the rest of the folks and how it tied into everybody else's goals. It put a screeching halt to the plan, because we had to go back and re-educate the process that committee was doing. So transparency, you have to communicate, get Outlook working. If you're not real technical, get Outlook working properly, that everybody's communicating all the docs they're using, every part of the process they're using. And, as we roll into talking about communication, everything happens after. Everybody says, oh, we got a strategic plan. Whoopee, isn't this wonderful? No, it's worth 0 if it is not implemented. And if you're going to, you have to think past not just the 5-year plan, but what's going to happen. Your vision statement is to be the absolute, I'm going to pick on Palo for a second in a profit, to be the absolute best digital printer in the world. Well, if your vision statement is to be the best caretaker of homeless people in your whole region, you have to incorporate that vision into your plan. So you have to think beyond that, which means you also have to make sure your priorities are in line and you're taking the action steps to make it happen. This is not a plan to be put in the shelf or in the drawer. This is a plan to be posted. I like a 4 or 5 page plan that's posted in every committee meeting. It's posted at every meeting you do. And once you get that plan together, if you don't take action on how you prioritize what needs to happen, it just, as the old expression, it ain't going to happen. You have to do that. So you have to get those goals solid and the strategies for them, and then take action.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
So one thing, a couple things actually that I would add to that is when you're thinking past the plan, you really have to look at, like we keep talking about, the valuable asset is the human capital, the people, your team. So what if one of your leaders decides to leave? Or having a clear understanding of your leadership and organizational capacity and resources at your disposal is really paramount. And as well as determining those priorities, that will best help your organization have a really meaningful impact. So it's a process of really looking ahead and future planning, which includes developing, approving, implementing, and monitoring all of the strategies. And sometimes, we create these wonderful plans, and like Jim mentioned, you put it on the shelf, it collects dust. I can't tell you how many organizations I've worked with where the employees never even seen the strategic plan. They're hired, they're trained, they're doing their job to the best of their abilities, and they don't have no idea what the plan is. So, right, it's sharing the plan, it's monitoring, it's revising, it's looking at, so how is it going to be sustainable if nothing is, if it's not a living document? Because outdated processes are constantly a challenge. You have to keep rethinking your strategies. So this is what will deliver more value and create a more sustainable advantage. So I'm going to go into the next part, which is commitment to making changes and being an example through leadership. And I think we talked about this. Change is difficult for everyone, especially difficult for organizations that have been doing things a certain way for a very long time. And I think, as we've all experienced, probably, we have to really expect the unexpected. I mean, the pandemic, if nothing else, it taught me that, and being prepared to act and adjust to the crisis situations as they arise is a leader's responsibility. Crisis with funding issues, staff issues, market disruptions, technology advancement, and how are those internal, external forces, how are they changing, how you do business, how your planning efforts. This often necessitates a major change for an organization to remain really relevant. And to be frank, dealing with the pandemic or any crisis was a clear wake-up call for me to realize that adapting to change is just not a fluid approach. Even if you've been in, crisis situations before, it's meaning that you can't always just go with the flow of what is changing around you as you normally think and operate. So as many of us may be faced with the challenges of shifting, everything, for example, to a virtual platform. And while some were able to adapt, others had a difficult time because the leadership really, didn't know what to do or didn't know how to do it or weren't prepared to make those changes. And it's really, it's a harder time if we're unable to keep the organization afloat. So leadership is, and nonprofits, I think we're all willing to commit to adapt and adopting new strategies that will really lead your organization, into a sustainable place for the future. So I always say foresight, use foresight, not hindsight. And in my doctoral, that was what I focused on. That was my concentration and research. I think I've read about it and wrote about so much that it's always in my mind, future planning, foresight. So I always try to reiterate that anytime I'm working with, any of my clients or colleagues, and even for myself as well. So Jim, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I want to tell a story that is pretty sad, but it's a good story. But I've worked with Dr. Springs a couple of years now, and I think her absolute strength is she knows how to help leaders understand change in a different way than I've ever seen. And it's really helped me in both my professional and my personal life as I've watched her not just teach it, but bring it to efforts in boards that we've worked with. When I was CEO of the mission I spoke about a while ago, we finished our strategic plan, and it was a homeless shelter for men, which 100 years ago when it was started, that's the way shelters were done for the men without jobs, and the shelters were built for them for whatever reason. And as of course everything's evolved, women and children are as homeless as men are, and that is just a simple fact. The strategic plan, one of the major arms was opening a woman and children shelter to go along with the men's shelter. And the whole plan blew up at that point because the old members of the board, and when I say old, I can say that because I am old members of the board took over, and they absolutely said, we will never serve children. And they actually pirated the board, buried the strategic plan. And now, in all honesty, I no longer am associated with them. They're really struggling because they couldn't embrace that change. And we need to wrap up, Ms. Delores, because we want to save time for questions. So let's do a quick wrap up.
Yep, let me just want to, thank you guys for being here. And I just want to go over just a couple of quick points. To ensure your plan is sustainable, just remember the leadership needs to be willing to commit to changes, implement sustainability strategies, and think and plan ahead to assure that you can adapt and respond to issues and challenges or crisis, turbulent environments as things arise. So now we're going to go into the Q&A part, and I really appreciate your participation as far as, this is an opportunity to engage with each other. So learning and sharing strategies, resources, hopefully you'll make a friend or find a business partner, or, but let's open this time up for discussions. And I am going to, you can go into the chat.
We are not seeing, if you want to read those chat questions, I think Palo, you may have put a couple in there. Please read those to us and let the group.
Yeah. Oh, let me.
Or Carl or Palo, if you want to just speak up now with your questions, jump in.
So
they weren't actually questions, they're just more comments to what was going on. So not even relevant particularly anymore, but maybe they are, maybe they aren't. So not everybody can see these, is that the deal? Even though it says everyone? Yes, no?
No.
Okay. So I put in there, being a nonprofit or not-for-profit is not a business plan. It's a tax status. The organization still needs to operate like a business, like people need to be compensated just like any other organization that does not have that tax status. So that was to Dr. Springs, people underpaid and all that kind of stuff, which I'm tired of hearing, just pay people. And that's a whole different discussion about why they don't. And then I put, you were talking about staff and board works together. And I said, I just want to make sure that, and the board does not run the staff. As a board member, I expect the staff to run me.
Absolutely. I'm with you there.
I expect the staff to use my board skills, either understand what my skills are, or I'll just tell you what they are if you can't articulate them. Maybe some people can't articulate what their skills are. And it's up to the staff to use my skills. Now, as a board member, I call up the director of development, fund development, all those things, executive director, and say, okay, what do you want me to do this week? Who do you want me to call? What donors do you want? What do you want me to, I push them, but I don't tell them what to do, but I'm letting them know that, hey, I'm here to help. I'm here to help. Because all the things, I mean, everything you were talking about is great and all that, but from my perspective, like, that's not what I'm involved in. That's operation of the organization and all that. That's not what I get involved in particularly. I just want to know, what are my marching orders? What do you want me to do? By when? How do you want me to report? So
I'm
I
going-
see the bifurcation between what you're talking about and how I operate on boards. So that's.
I'm going to invite you, Palo, to a couple of my board meetings that don't understand that, because you're absolutely right. Of course, we're talking about, our purpose of this series is reaching out to the fundraising executives, the ones that are dealing with the challenges of employees or whatever. But boy, if we don't get board members involved and hearing this message, exactly what you said, oh my goodness, are we in trouble? And it happens all the time. I'm bored, I'm king. No, I'm bored, I'm servant. And you carry that servant attitude. Hey, Carl, do you have anything for us? A question that's burning in your mind that you want to throw at us, sir?
Are you a mind reader, Jim? I think you are. I see a lot of parallels, and it ties in with a lot of what Pelo was saying, I think, and that is that a lot of these things apply to nonprofits or profit companies. The one thing that I'm not quite grasping is the importance of having, I mean, you have these strategies, but I think goal setting is extremely important. And then how do you measure your success? Is it, oh, we spent all our money, so it's time for a new year and we need to fill the coffers again? How do you measure if you're meeting your gols? I'm sure it's hard, depending on what your business is, it must be difficult, but.
Yeah, let me jump in there first if I can, Delores. I think, don't forget, you're going to put these goals in front of you, and then you're going to develop the strategies to reach each of the goals. Example, a simple one is, I want to raise $1 million in my 5th year, and I want to do it with $200,000 worth of fundraising events. As those events evolve and get created, they're all put in the timeline. And if you're not reaching those goals, everything has to be adjusted. So to keep on track, the timeline has to be strict. The most important part of any strategic plan is, if you're not reviewing those timelines, and if you're not making the changes and evolving that thing called the plan, you're not doing your job. So the chairman of the strategic planning committee has to continually monitor and make sure everything is kept in time. Does that answer your question? And maybe Delores can do it better than me.
Yeah, I was just going to draw an example. Excuse me 1 second, Jim, with your homeless services. Would part of the plan be to serve, I don't know, 50 homeless men a month, or whatever it is? What is the purpose of the actual nonprofit, and then how is that tying into the fundraising and the strategies? And
okay, so then I'll just answer that exact question. I'll pass it over to Delores. So let's say in the 5th year, I want to be serving 40 homeless men. Right now I'm serving 6. At the end of the 1st year, I want to be serving 8 or 10. 2nd year, 12, 15, 20, and you step it up so that in the 5th year, you're serving that amount. Now, at the same time, so that's your program, you're serving these people. At the same time, your finances have to reach their strategic goals inside the big goal to make sure that the money is there to serve the people you're trying to serve.
And how many people you're serving is going to affect how much money you need.
It's all tied in.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Delores, you were going to have some input on that. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to be mindful of the time, and I want to give you and Palo, and I think there's another participant that joined that I want to acknowledge. Sergey?
Yes, hi. This is Serge, yes.
Hi, how are you? Thank you.
Very good. Hello, everyone. Sorry,
I just
was
wanted
very,
to
very
acknowledge
late.
you and say hi and welcome, and then just give you a minute to make a comment if you wanted to.
Well, thank you very much, Delores. Yeah, apologize for being late today. I just finished a meeting. I don't know exactly what was discussed during the call, so I cannot really comment on that. I really like, though, what I heard from Pelo. I think everyone should take nonprofit as seriously as you, Pello, mentioned it. It is that is we have a nonprofit online platform that provides IT services to over 2 million nonprofits. And so the way, and it's all totally nonprofit. We don't even raise capital. Everything is funded by my family, basically. And so, but the bottom line is that the way I see the great majority of those nonprofits, they don't spend enough time on their mission, on their passion, because they're busy raising capital. And one reason that they're stuck in that kind of mind framework, I guess, I'm not sure exactly what would be the word for that. I'm French Canadian, so sometimes I have to search for my English words. The issue is that they don't run their nonprofit as a business. They run it as something they want to do because they want to give. They have that passion about something, and they just want to give. But they realize that if they could realize that the more funds that they get in, the more they will be able to focus on their passion, on their mission. It would take a whole different, they will bring their company or their business or their nonprofit to a whole different level. And that's what I try to teach them, to educate them to become more sufficient, but also to take responsibility for what they have. They create their nonprofit, they run it as a business, and they will have more time by having the right people with them, having the right board. A person like Pello, you should go on every board of every company.
Serge, I just wanted to, there's one thing you said, which is, one of the challenges with nonprofits is people, foundations, supporters, donors donate money, and then they specifically say these cannot be used for operations. They must be used for this, this, or this.
You're correct.
So that hamstrings the nonprofit. And so it's not like the nonprofit willingly says, oh, you know, whatever it was you were talking about, which is I need to focus more on this as opposed to this. It's the donor, foundation, or whomever, they're actually setting the terms. No other business would you be allowed to do that.
Absolutely.
And that is a huge problem in the nonprofit world, because I'm hearing all the executive directors talk about it. Yep. So when I go out and fundraise, I make sure that they are unencumbered, that they're just general. And so that it has to start with that kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, there's a lot of factors that come.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was my 60 seconds, Delores.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You actually closed us out really well. So in the essence of time, I'm going to just briefly remind you, welcome you to attend next month's forum. It's on June 29th. The third part is on July 20th. And I hope that you're able to attend. And if you want to have a personal approach to discuss your needs any further, you can contact Jim and I for a consultation. You can follow us on LinkedIn, visit the website. And I'm going to move on to invite our wonderful leader, Philip, back in to close us out, give us the final word, and talk about AGIF.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I can't see who's on the call, but I think our wonderful executive director, Spencer Gould, is or was on the call. So I wanted just to acknowledge him, that he makes everything happen. And without him, we would not have an AGIF. So he was on in the beginning, and just Spencer.
Thank you, Philip. I'm still here.
Oh.
So there's Spencer, at least his image. So yes, thank you so much, Delores and Jim, for everything. That was truly wonderful. As Delores said, the next one will be on proven strategies for fundraising and development success. And I will also participate in that with some other non-traditional ideas that most people don't know about or haven't thought of. And certainly welcome everyone to return with, again, additional ideas that you can all contribute to. So thank you so much for coming. That is our contact information on the slide there. So we'd be delighted to hear from you. You
And we can send the slides out as a copy in the email.
send the slides out. And if you want to reach me personally, it's philip@theagif.org, PHILIP with one L. Spencer is Spencer@theagif.org. And that makes it very simple to reach all of us. Okay. Thank you so
Philip,
much.
just quickly, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let everybody know that those links for the new or for the upcoming events will be available on the same website page here very soon. So as soon as our programmer updates the webpage, those will be available.
Great, thank you. So yeah, so we'll start promoting the next two very soon, and obviously please sign up, and we look forward to your joining us. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dolores. Thank you, Jim.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everybody for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Want to stay on, Delores?
Yeah, let me hold on.